name is Hiroshi Ochiumi, Marshall School of Business, Department of Data Sciences and Operations. And I'm going to introduce each panelist, let's start from Carlos. Carlos Contreras, VP Commercial, California Resource Corporation. Go ahead.
Good morning. First, I want to thank the U.S. Marshall School for hosting this event, Nick, the members of the board, Professor Ochiumi, for giving me an opportunity to share this, some thoughts here with you all this morning, and obviously, most importantly, you all. My name is Carlos Contreras. I work for California Resources Corporation, which today is a wholly owned subsidiary of Occidental Petroleum. As many of you may know, we're spinning off our California assets into a new company, and that company is going to be California Resources Corporation, and I will be filling the role of Vice President Commercial. Vice President Commercial, what that means is, I know it sounds, what does that really mean? It's kind of dollars in and dollars out of the company. So the marketing entity, our commercial analysis group, and our supply chain organization will report up through me. So to tell you a little bit about California Resources Corporation, to put some things maybe a little bit into perspective for you, we're going to be the largest oil and gas producer in the state of California. So on a gas basis, by far the largest. On the oil basis, second largest, but on a total of barrels of oil equivalent perspective, the largest. We're kind of just shy of 200,000 barrels a day of production. We have 2.3 million acres in the state of California, which is the largest acreage position in the state. We employ between employees and contractors roughly about 8,000 people, pay about $230 million in taxes in the state. And it's we're not a small company. Our motto going forward obviously is energy for Californians by Californians. I grew up in California, so I'm a California boy that went out and studied in the East Coast, served some time in the military. And by the way, I'll put in a little something here. The Marshall School also has a program that CRC Resources and other companies sponsor. It's very important for you all to know, and maybe some of you are participating in the program. It's an MBA for veterans program that's here, and so if any of you gentlemen are here, or ladies, please get with me later. We're always looking to employ folks who have served our country. So Hiroshi, I'm not sure if that's enough for an intro.
Next panelist is Greg Renfro, VP Global Manufacturing Strategy, a National Oil Vertical.
Yes, I too would like to thank the Marshall School of Business and the university for inviting us here today, and Hiroshi for chairing this session. My name is Greg Renfro. I'm with the company National Oil Well Varco. It's quite a large company, but probably one that few of you have even heard about. And we are the largest producer of oil field drilling equipment and machinery for both oil and gas exploration. We are a large company, as I mentioned earlier, about a $35 billion company, 65,000 employees in about 700 locations in 63 countries. So we're quite geographically diverse. Our world headquarters is in Houston, and I happen to office out here in California because that's where my family wants to live. And I travel all the time because within my group we have 42 manufacturing locations around the world. So our products can range from large to small combinations of products. Our customers are drilling contractors normally, and they in turn are providing services for the oil companies or natural gas companies. There's probably not a rig in the world that doesn't have some of our equipment or even a lot of our equipment. An offshore installation on a floating vessel could range up to $300 million in terms of our scope of supply, and that would be everything associated with all the superstructures, the drilling equipment, the equipment to make conduit down to the ocean floor, and then in turn to drill into the ocean floor. It could be as large as that, or on land. A typical land rig could be on the order of around $20 or $25 million. Similar capabilities, but without all of the motion control systems, all of the systems to get from the floating vessel down to the ocean floor, and all the station keeping equipment. These rigs can be taken down and moved in a day, back up and drilling in a day. And in today's world with the oil shales, the the secret is the quantity of wells and being able to drill horizontally. So quite a lot of technology. And we could go from an engineer-to-order product all the way through configured-to-order products. So that's a little bit about National Oilwell Varco.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Sander Desmet, Product Manager, Bureau van Dijk. Did I say it right?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sander Desmet, Bureau van Dijk. We're a business information provider. We're based, or I am based in Brussels. We have offices, well, like 30 offices between San Francisco and Sydney. So we're truly a global company. And I am a product manager at Bureau van Dijk. That means that I basically have to translate all the requests coming from clients and prospects in the area of supplier risk management to our development team. And believe me, that's a different language, and there is a lot of translation needed there. So I try to make sure that we create products which is really in line with what people are expecting to have. Now, as a business information provider, we provide company information and business intelligence on about 130 million companies worldwide. And we source our data based on partnerships, strategic partnerships with local companies who are sending us on a daily basis millions of data items, financial data items related to legal events, to M&A transactions, to reputational risk, to environmental risk, and so on. So we try to put everything together in one global database, make sure that you can assess any of your suppliers in exactly the same format, in the same language, in the same currency. Now we're working with a lot of large corporates in a wide variety of industries who have been struggling with not only identifying a new supplier and evaluating that supplier, but trying to find out how the spend with that supplier is linked with a corporate family tree, with a business unit, with a region. I understand that most of your procurement departments are really decentralized, and to have a clear view on what is your exposure to risk on these several departments is really important to know. So what we basically try to do is we centralize our data with your data in one tool. We try to standardize that data, and if you have done that exercise, then you have the ability to automate the whole process and have a timely view on your exposure to risk for your complete supplier base.
Thank you very much. Parag Shukal, founder, Urja Foundation.
Hi, good morning to you. All of you present out here. Thank you so very much to the U.S. Marshall School for giving us an opportunity. In fact, our work in the social sector, which is essentially in the fields of renewable energy, rural electrification, and decentralized power, and we have started this in Bangladesh. In Dhaka, we started off with Grameen Shakti with regards to rural electrification projects. We have done the same, similarly scaled up in India, and now we are just operational in Africa in a big way. The whole challenge that we find with regards to the risk side is that we are sourcing most of our products from all different countries, and that's exactly what our role play would be, to mitigate and consolidate the stability of the technical stuff that we get in India, or be it in Africa, or be it in Southeast Asia as well. Those are the challenges that we grapple on, and that's what I'm going to be highlighting on today. So thank you so very much, Professor Hiroshi, for having us here.
Thank you very much. So we have a variety of industry represented in this panel. Two are from oil and gas industry. One speaker is from, can I call it database service?
Business information.
Business information. And one from actually charity organization. And we all agreed that the panelists actually prefers that the audience, if you have a questions, raise your hand and then interrupt the talk and then ask more active and then productive discussions. Okay, so why don't we start? I would like to start again from Carlos. After introducing your company and then your role within the organization, if we say supply chain related risks, what are the major risks that your organization faces? And if you can actually talk about actual incidents, that would be nice, or how you try to mitigate all these risks. How do you handle if something happens, and how to prepare for these potential incidents?
Absolutely. So obviously, from a supply chain perspective, I think one of the things that we look at is that we don't cost the company more money than the value we think we're trying to bring in through commercial negotiations. As part of that, obviously, there's you have internal risks, you have some external risks. And one of the conversations I had prior to coming that Hiroshi wanted me to touch base on, which is, you know, more along the value chain related, you know, is safety. And so, you know, I was a former officer in the Army, and you know, we always said mission first, soldiers always. And I think that that's something that translates into the oil field as well, because our #1 priority as managers at Occidental today and going forward at CRC is making sure that individuals, you know, that leave the office every day or the workplace every day in the same way that they arrived. And you know, part of what we do for that is, you know, it starts at the top and it goes all the way to, you know, to the pumpers in the field. And so we've instituted a program it's called it's a safety leadership program. So every line manager is, you know, takes the program. It's 2 days worth of classes that start early in the morning and go late into the evening. But the safety program doesn't start or stop with that 2-day leadership course. Of course, it's a program that, you know, that's continuous learning, as kind of Nick mentioned today. But we have you know, various courses that the different managers have to go through, you know, to make that happen. And yeah, I wish I had my little card to get in and out of the building. But one of the things we also want to make sure we do is we empower our employees to know that they have a stop work authority. And what that means for us is, you know, you show up to a job site, and if you see anything going on, you can stop the work. And the dollars at that point don't matter, right? Because the most important thing is to make sure that the folks can go home at the end of the day.
Carlos, is it easy to actually stop work?
So, I mean,
there must be some kind of pressure. We have to continue, and then earn money.
That's correct. And so, but where we start is empowering the individuals to know that they have that authority. And in fact, the little card, and I wish I had brought it with me. I could turn it around and show you. It's signed by our executive chairman and our CEO. And so I have been at job sites where, you know, you show up and you ask questions. You know, my CEO showed up and asked a question and asked, you know, has the JSA been put together for this job? And, you know, what are the risk factors to doing this particular job? Or when we've been on a field tour, saying somebody just stop the work, and that's, you know, it starts at the, you know, the lowest position in the company, and, you know, all the way to the top. Yes.
When the person with the authority to stop the process, does that person aware of how much that the stoppage would cost for your operation?
Well, certainly, but I mean, when you're thinking about somebody's life, you're not considering the dollar amount at that time. It's, you know, we want everybody to go home safely.
So the question was, does the worker knows? I have to repeat the question because this is kind of recorded. The audience question was, does the person at the job site knows the financial impact on stopping? And then Carlos' answer was,
yeah, the answer is that you know, though folks know, they may know that the implications of that particular piece of the job and may not know the total dollars that are involved, but from our perspective, we're not thinking dollars, we're thinking about making sure that somebody goes home safely.
it is probably easy to say, you know, in a conference like this, but then I wonder if this is actually easy to do it on the job site. Again, because I think there's a certain pressure that you have to finish this by the end of today, by the end of tomorrow.
There's always a pressure to make sure that you get the job done, but the importance is, you know, when you internalize something, so you empower the individual, you know, with the knowledge that they can stop the work, and when they internalize that, then you begin to act on, you know, the way we want folks to operate, right, and do things. You're always looking for efficiencies, capital efficiencies, and doing things, you know, quicker because you can get a dollar. But I mean, more often than not, I would say that when we go and do an investigation after an incident has occurred, somebody was not following the processes or procedures. It's not everybody followed the processes and procedures, and this incident, you know, this accident occurred. It's obviously they're called accidents, but it's when a leader allows somebody to cut a corner. You know, I don't know how many of you have had an opportunity to be on a rig, but you know, when the whistle blows and the folks walk to start the job, you know, the operative word there is you walk to start the job. And you know, I've looked at investigations in the past where the drilling superintendent just allowed the guys just to run on and get into position, and you know, that's usually when the injuries occur. And so it's you know, taking on that role of a leader, and safety leadership, I think, starts at, you know, the very beginning, you know, at the lowest common denominator, if you will.
So would you say that's almost like a culture? So
it's a culture, absolutely.
If you go work for your organization, you'll kind of be instilled.
So everybody that starts, like I said, I mentioned the leadership, but also, you know, there's a week-long course for our contractors when they start with us. You know, to understand Oxy's policies and procedures, right? And so they get it from their company, but then they get it from us, and what is expected of folks working in our, you know, on our locations, on our fields, you know, to go about that. So
this is about the human safety issues, right? What about, since you are from oil and gas industry, what about interruption? I can think of interruption as major supply chain related risks.
So when you're saying interruptions, you're saying interruptions to production?
Right.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, that's where we're talking about the dollar amounts, right? And but again, safety first, right? So again, I'll go back to my military days, right? Mission first, soldiers always. So, yes, sir.
How many stop workages do you know did you actually have in 2013?
I don't. You know. Let me. I can check. I asked my HES manager to send me that, but I'm not quite sure that exact number was here.
The question was, how many stoppage did you see last year?
I can tell you, I've personally witnessed over the last 3 months 3 stop works. You know, and they range from, you know, when you stop the work, you reevaluate the safety and the risk. You update your JSA, and then you can resume work. Right? It's not that the work stops completely for the day. You're just stopping an unsafe activity.
So it's a 15-minute, half-hour process?
It can be a 15-minute process because somebody's just not wearing gloves. It can be a full day, you know, to a number of days, depending on the order of magnitude that's observed.
As a Chevron, I know I've dealt with them a little bit before, and they've got a repetitive strain injury type of focus on being proactive to preventing that. And I know that, so do you get yourself involved with some proactive type behaviors of these people to help prevent that? Because obviously it's the workers, but it's also very costly to the organization if they do end up with an injury like that. So
absolutely, we do, and we have ongoing training, and in fact, a lot of the producers, at least in Kern County, share that information. And so, you know, so to use Chevron as an example, Chevron is a 20% working interest owner in our field that we operate at Elk Hills in just outside of Bakersfield, next to Taft, and we have biannual meetings with them where we present, you know, as an operator what's going on at Elk Hills, but also the Chevron on an ongoing basis. Our HES managers, our health, environment, and safety managers are sharing information and best practices, right? This is something we saw in the field while we were trying a new piece of equipment. You know, I think that this would probably be helpful to your organization to make sure you're keeping folks safe, and this dialogue is ongoing. Keeping people alive isn't proprietary, right? We want to make sure that the...
Have you had any experience with proactively screening contractors before a job is awarded to them for safety specifically? And what are the main sources of data or systems that you may use for that purpose?
Absolutely. So we track every incident, whether it's an individual that trips, whether it's, you know, something, you know, just happened to get in their eye as they were walking to the job, to if there was a mechanical failure and they were hit with a piece of equipment, and we track all of that data, and we track it by service provider. And so it definitely impacts, you know, a service provider if they're not, you know, adhering to the standards that we want to keep people safe in the field. And they just don't get work from us if they're not adhering to those standards. So, and I actually just to your question, I was speaking with the gentleman that runs our supply chain organization that reports to me just yesterday, actually, and we were tracking data as we go out, and we were Occidental, and we're getting ready to go out as California Resources. A lot of those contracts come over to us, but we're going to evaluate every contractor on their safety performance as well, and that happens at today at Oxy. But we're going to make sure that and so he was walking me through data by contractor. We were looking at drilling contractors. We were also looking at companies that provide roustabout services for us.
I'd like to add a little bit to that. Our company is an equipment supplier to drilling contractors and in turn to the oil companies, and we are often audited at the request of the end user. The oil company are auditing the drilling contractor safety records and then their key principal suppliers. So it's commonplace, and I think with the Macondo issues and disaster in the Gulf a few years ago, safety not only of the operation, safety of the employees has really become centrally focused and paramount in our industry. And it's really driven substantially by the oil companies.
That's right.
I have a question.
Go ahead, last question.
Yes, Carlos talking about the personal safety is one thing, but another thing is your company is equipment supplier for the oil and gas companies. And,
yes.
For example, there's a possible port strike, and then there's an earthquake, like the Japanese tsunami, the supply chains all interrupted. How could your company try to minimize that risk?
In the case, do you want to repeat the question? In the case of some sort of a natural disaster, in that context, in terms of the equipment design is covering a number of environmental factors and external forces. In many cases, we'll design equipment to withstand what we call the 100-year storm, or other cataclysmic activities that might happen. If the ocean falls into a hole in the floor of the ocean, that's not something we can mitigate. But generally, we're built to withstand earthquake-related activities, 100-year storms for offshore and on land. And so we do that. In terms of our supply chain and maintaining supplies during that time, we have a lot of supply that is in various stages throughout the world, and we actually have a global supply chain that comes from many different countries. So in some cases we'll have redundant supply networks for the Eastern Hemisphere or the Western Hemisphere, or even North and South America, that provide us that latitude. And that's for a different reason, but actually we could draw on that in the cases of a natural disaster.
So what you're saying in that case is you can enroll the supply through the other channel. In case there's a natural disaster.
Yeah. So you have 5 suppliers. Yes, you have 5 suppliers. One is down. Maybe you can ask the other 4 to handle the demand.
And obviously, you try to structure yourself in a way that you have that kind of redundancy. But sometimes you may have a supplier that there is only one of.
Right.
And then you recognize that risk, and then you may actually offset that risk with having a more aggressive stocking strategy. And then displace that stock in various regions around the world.
Makes sense.
It's not I wouldn't say natural disaster is a core in our stocking or supply chain strategy, but obviously we're trying to mitigate any foreseeable risk.
I agree with you, because of the Japanese tsunami and the Toyota, Honda, the supplies was completely stopped for a couple of months, and people are talking about the JIT strategy, the lean manufacturing strategy. Is that worthwhile or not? There's a lot of debate, but I agree with you.
It certainly, thinning out your supply chain or going to lean and just-in-time principles certainly could expose you to significant risks if you had limited numbers of suppliers, or those suppliers were impacted by a natural disaster, certainly. And that's anytime that you're managing your supply chain, you really have to be looking at, what is the risk of an interruption? What's the likelihood of it? Is it in an unstable environment politically? Is it in an unstable environment economically? What are those risks? And those are things you have to consider.
And in fact, to add upon what he also mentioned with regards to the risks of natural disasters, you did mention about the Japanese tsunami. Now, we were severely affected because our panels were coming from Japan, but what we had mitigated or factored in is when we have chose a supplier, when we pick up a supplier, we ensure that they have multiple production centers and not just from a country, and do have assembling units from different areas as well. So when it came down to Japan, we did have our supply not been interrupted because they started shipping out from other centers all over the globe that we had, and that made it easier for us in terms of factoring, multiple production centers that we ensure.
That case is the Japanese tsunami. Some of the core components is very controlled. And there's only one, I understood, there's only very limited manufacturer can supply these components. And in case there's a natural disaster or something, it's completely, the whole supply chain is completely interrupted, stopped. But my question is, the likelihood or the possibilities of that natural disasters, like 50 years, 100 years or once, is that worth the current strategy is still right approach, or you can review it with another approach? So.
Well, speaking for us, we're constantly reviewing the robustness, if you will, of our supply chain and our contingency planning, and much in the way that was mentioned here is we have several people around the world, several facilities. We may have special forgings, for example, a raw forging 75-ton special material.
Right.
There's maybe this many people in the world in terms of companies that can produce it. We may be tapped into 2 or 3 of those in some cases. We may have a large electric motor that's produced by only one supplier, and we're constantly looking at how do we mitigate that separately. But I think you have to plan for the natural disasters. That even when there was this enormous disaster in the Gulf of Mexico with the blowout, it didn't happen to be our equipment. But if you notice how quickly the industry was able to respond, there was a floating rig in a mile of water that drilled 5 miles into the earth, and it was more than a mile away laterally. It drilled into the earth and hit a piece of pipe this big from all of that dynamic, and was able to kill the well ultimately. There was a lot of tries to do it, but if you think about how bad it could have been if that technology hadn't been available, it may still be going.